Yeah, it's okay.
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
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 Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataruvyacha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo
Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we welcome all of you on behalf of ISKCON Chile Education Department to our weekly online Krishna book classes. We have with us here Auntie Neeta, Aja, Dipti Adnani, Karuna, Manju Nihalani, Meenakshi, Priyanka Jha. My husband is there. Then we have Ritu Lalwani, Shailesh Latkar. Then we have Shantaram Latkar, Sheetal Latkar, Shivani, Shreya Kalaria, Shri Radhe Hari Devidasi, Vivansh, and we have Wendy. Okay. So what did we see in the previous class?
Akrura witnessed the Mahavishnu form of Krishna.
So Akrura saw that form which left him stunned. No, he saw the amazing form. He saw how Krishna is lying on Anantashesha in the form of, in his four-handed Vishnu form. Okay. Then what else did we see? Where are Krishna and Balaram right now?
In Mathura.
They have reached Mathura yet?
Not yet.
Not
They
yet.
are on the
They
way
are,
to Mathura.
yeah, they are on the way to Mathura when Akrura halted and he went for his bath in the Yamuna. And that's when he saw that form. Okay. So today, by the mercy of Sri Guru and Sri Krishna, we are seeing chapter number 41 of the Krishna book titled Krishna Enters.
Krishna enters Mathura.
So let's read. While Akrura was offering his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord disappeared from the water exactly as an expert dramatic actor changes his dress and assumes his original feature. After the Vishnu Murti disappeared, Akrura got out of the water. Finishing the rest of his ritualistic performance, he went near the chariot of Balaram and Krishna and was struck with wonder. Krishna asked whether he had seen something wonderful within the water or in space. Akrura said, "My dear Lord, all wonderful things that are happening within this world, either in the sky or in the water or on the land, are factually appearing in your universal form. So when I have seen you, what wonderful things have I not seen?" This statement confirms the Vedic version that one who knows Krishna knows everything, and that one who has seen Krishna has seen everything, regardless of how wonderful a thing may be. My dear Lord, Akrura continued, there cannot be anything more wonderful than your transcendental form. When I have seen your transcendental form, what is there left to see? So remember in the previous chapter, we saw how Akrura, he offered prayers to that wonderful form that he was seeing in the waters of the Lord. No? And as Akrura is offering those prayers, then Krishna has withdrawn that form from Akrura's vision. So he didn't wait for Akrura to even finish his prayers, no, because everything about Krishna is dramatic. So he withdraws the form when Akrura was still offering his prayers. And then what did Akrura do? He went back. He finished his ritualistic bath. And then he went to the chariot. And then he told Krishna and Balaram that, actually he told Krishna that once one has seen you, then what else is there left to be seen? There cannot be anything more wonderful than to see Krishna, than to see the wonderful form, the wonderful transcendental form of Krishna. So this is actually... the statement is also there in the Shastras. See here. From the Mundaka Upanishad. If one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of all controllers, one can understand everything else. So, Krishna has shown his universal form before, right? To Mother Yashoda, when twice to Mother Yashoda, when once when she was giving him milk and then she saw the entire universal form. She saw the whole cosmic manifestation in his mouth. And then again, Krishna has shown it when once Mother Yashoda told him that, have you been eating dirt? And then Krishna says no. And she says, open your mouth. I want to check. So that time also Yashoda, Mother Yashoda, she sees the entire cosmic manifestation. And we know also later, when Krishna went as a peace messenger to Hastinapur before the war to establish peace and avoid the war, that time also Krishna showed the universal form because Duryodhana wanted to capture Krishna. At that time, Krishna showed his universal form. And again, he showed his universal form to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra before the war had started. So when in that universal form, Krishna displayed how everything that exists is there in him. All the devatas, all the demigods, all the planetary systems, the entire material nature, everything in the spiritual world, everything is there in Krishna. So once one sees the form of Krishna, then there is nothing more left to be seen. Everything wonderful is only a spark of Krishna's energy. Krishna himself says that in the Bhagavad Gita. So if one can understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then everything becomes automatically known to him. Everything becomes automatically known to him. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says to Arjuna, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So even, once you see Krishna, there's nothing more left to be seen. And also the knowledge that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita is so complete. It's like a manual of life. Whenever you buy a product, then it comes with a manual, instruction manual on how to use the product. So for our human body, Bhagavad Gita is the manual of life. It gives us all the required information for us to know how to attain the goal of this human life, how to love God, how to surrender to God, and therefore go back home, back to Godhead. So this knowledge is complete. Of course, there are other scriptures, no doubt. There are other bona fide scriptures which have some information, but Bhagavad Gita has the complete information. See, when Jesus Christ, he was on this planet, he actually told his followers that I am not going to reveal full knowledge to you. I will only reveal some knowledge to you. He didn't tell them that I will reveal all, because he said that if I reveal all the knowledge, then you will faint. So every bona fide messenger of God will will preach according to time, place, and circumstances. So the circumstances at that time, whatever they permit, that much only they will reveal. So you may have a pocket dictionary and you have a complete encyclopedia. It's not that the information in the pocket dictionary is wrong. It is correct, but it is not as complete as the information that you will find in a complete encyclopedia, for example. So like that, Bhagavad Gita is the complete encyclopedia. And there are other scriptures also, but because they are preaching according to time, place, and circumstances, it is not complete. It is correct. It's not that it is wrong, but it is not as complete as the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Shailesh, you have your hand raised.
It says here that when you understand Krishna, you understand everything. But isn't Krishna Achintya? So how do you understand him?
Yes, Krishna is Achintya, inconceivable, but by Krishna's mercy, we can understand Krishna. For that also, we need Krishna's mercy. So if Krishna, to the extent to which we surrender to Krishna, Krishna will allow you to understand him like that. So if Krishna wants, mission impossible can be mission unstoppable. So we can try to understand Krishna from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. The more we know, the more we learn, the more closer we get to Krishna, the more we surrender to Krishna, and then the more Krishna will allow you to know more about it. It's a endless cycle like that. Okay. I'm sorry, my internet got off. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
What
Yes.
was the last thing you all heard?
Hmm.
Were we on this slide?
First slide.
This one?
No, before that.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we not read this? Because I think I was answering Shailesh's question. Did I finish answering your
Yes,
question?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So then here. After saying this, Akrura immediately started driving the chariot, and by the end of the day, they reached the precincts of Mathura. As they rode from Vrindavan to Mathura, all the passers-by along the way who saw Krishna and Balaram could not help but look at them again and again. In the meantime, the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda and Upananda, had already reached Mathura by going through the forest, and they were awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram in a garden. Upon reaching the entrance to Mathura, Krishna and Balaram got down from the chariot and shook hands with Akrura. Krishna informed him, "You may go home now because we shall enter Mathura later, along with our associates."
Can I interrupt you, Mataji?
Yes.
Before you left, I saw a slide. In that slide, I read the first sentence like Krishna got out of the water, and Akrura was finished his rituals and reached the chariot. There is another slide I saw.
See, this is the first
Yeah,
slide.
this is the no, yeah, this one. We didn't read this.
This was the first slide
Yeah,
that
we
we read.
did. It's the first one.
See, because
We
we
did
started
read this.
here and then came this.
Yeah.
Did we read that? No, we did not.
Yes,
We
we
did
did.
Yeah,
read
yeah,
this.
we
Yes.
read. We read
Okay.
this, and then only we went to explain how once you see Krishna, then there's nothing else left to be seen. And then we saw this from Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So coming back to our current slide. So as soon as Krishna and Balaram have reached the presence of Mathura, Krishna tells Akrura, now you can go home. We shall enter Mathura later. So what time of the day actually they have reached the presence of Mathura? Have they reached in the morning? In the
Morning.
End of the
end of the day, by the end of the day. So by the time they have reached the presence of Mathura, it is the end of the day. And who has reached Mathura first? Krishna, Balaram, or Nanda and the others who have come in the other chariots?
Nanda and Upananda.
Nanda and
Yeah.
Upananda.
Why have Krishna and Balaram reached late?
Because
Why
they
was there a
wanted
delay
He
for
was
them?
having a bath.
They, हाँ,
Because he was having a bath.
Yes, because Akrura stopped to have a bath, even Krishna Balaram stopped to have a bath, and then there was something else also that delayed their journey. What was that?
Because he was praying in the water for long. no?
Yes, exactly. No, because Akrura also offered prayers. So because of these factors, they were delayed. But Nanda Maharaj, Upananda, his brother, and the other residents who have traveled to Mathura from Vrindavan, they have reached before Krishna and Balaram. Okay.
Could it also
Akrura.
be because the gopis had held them up when they were leaving Vrindavan?
Yes, yes. That is also one factor. Correct. Thank you. Okay. Akrura replied, my dear Lord, I cannot go to Mathura alone, leaving you aside. I am your surrendered servant. Please do not try to avoid me. Please come along with me, with your elder brother and cowherd boyfriends, and sanctify my house. My dear Lord, if you come, my home will be sanctified by the dust of your lotus feet. The water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers, the fire god, and all other demigods. Bali Maharaj has become famous simply by washing your lotus feet, and he enjoyed all material opulences and later on was elevated to the highest position of liberation. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds but is carried on the head of Lord Shiva. The ancestors of Bhagirath, sanctified by this water, achieved the heavenly planets. O Supreme Lord of Lords, O Master of the Universe, one can achieve piety simply by hearing about your transcendental pastimes. O Supreme Narayana, who are praised with select verses, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So see, Akrura, he is requesting Krishna that you please come to my house. By you coming to my house will be purified. My house will be
Purified.
sanctified. No? And then he is giving this example. He's talking about how the Ganges, the water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers. So he's talking about this particular incident when Vamanadev approached Bali Maharaj and he asked for 3 steps of land and charity because the demons had become very, very powerful and Bali Maharaj was the king of the demons. So in order to stop the demons from becoming more and more powerful, therefore the Lord, he took the form of a dwarf Brahman. So he appeared there as a dwarf Brahman and he told Bali Maharaj, I want charity. So he said, oh yes, what charity do you want? He said, give me 3 steps. So Bali Maharaj immediately said, yes, of course, I give you the charity that you're asking for. And then Vamanadev expanded himself. No, he expanded himself. He took the first step. He covered everything on earth. he took the second step and he went high up, even higher than Brahmaloka, the highest planet in the universe. And when he took his foot up to the highest part of the universe, the tip of his toenail tore across the outer covering of the universe. Now remember, our universe is an egg-shaped universe and it has some coverings, the gross coverings and the subtle coverings: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then you have the subtle coverings of mind, intelligence, and false ego. And beyond that universe, there is some water, right? Because remember, all these universes, now this is one universe, but all these universes are floating in one particular ocean. Which ocean? Does anybody remember?
Garbhodakshai.
Oh, Dakshaya.
Garbhodakashayi ocean. Where is Garbhodakashayi ocean? So, okay, let's go back to the three Vishnu.
Sorry,
It's
Karnodakshai
Ocean.
Karnodakshai ocean, that is the ocean of milk.
Garbhodakashayi ocean is within the universe because that's where Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is residing. Okay. So every ocean within each universe, there is a Garbhodakashayi ocean. But all these universes are floating in another ocean in which Karanodakashayi Vishnu is residing. What ocean is that?
Bhagirathi.
Hero, the Kishore.
It's called as a Karana ocean or the causal ocean. Okay, so Mahavishnu, he is creating universes by his breathing, right? And he is lying in the Karana ocean or causal water, it is called. Now, Mahavishnu Karanodakashayi Vishnu, he expands as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and he enters into each universe. So, what Garbhodakashayi Vishnu does is he half fills the universe with the water from his sweat. So, that is Garbhodaka ocean. So, Garbhodaka ocean is within the universe. But when Vamana Dev pierces the outer covering of the universe, then it is the Karana ocean or the causal ocean that is there outside the universe. So, that ocean comes inside the universe. Is it clear or it is confusing?
Yeah, I understood.
Okay. Is
No,
there anybody who didn't
I
understand?
got slightly confused.
Okay, so I think we need a photo. Let me get a photo. Okay, so see this photo?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Mahavishnu or Karanodakashayi Vishnu. So he is lying in this ocean called as the causal ocean or Karana ocean. Now Mahavishnu expands as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and he enters into each of those universes that he has created by his breathing. Okay, so each of these universes have their own Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And when Garbhodakashayi Vishnu enters into each of this universe, he half fills the universe with the water of his sweat. And he lies on that ocean. So the ocean which is inside the universe is called Garbhodaka ocean. And the ocean which is outside these universes, in which these universes are floating, that is called as the Karana ocean or the causal ocean. So when Vamanadev, he pierced the universe, right? Okay, let me get a photo of one universe.
My confusion amounts due to two things. One is that how can an entity inside the universe breach the universe? And second, if he breaches the universe, won't it destabilize the universe?
How can a living entity do that? A living entity cannot do that unless he is empowered by the Lord. And Vamanadev is also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary living entity. So for Vamanadev, it's nothing surprising because he is God himself. And what was your second
So
question? I'm sorry.
basically, second thing is that once he does that, won't it destabilize the entire universe? Like, uh, let me try to explain what I am trying to understand. If I have a let's say if I'm floating in a plastic boat and I pierce that boat and my feet go into the water and now the water is coming in. So shouldn't the boat sink? So
Yeah, but
that's
it will
what.
not sink immediately. It will sink depending on the size of the hole. So it will happen over time. And even our universe is going to be destroyed at the end of Kali Yuga. It's going to be completely inundated in water. Okay. All right. So here is our universe.
Yes.
So here on the earthly planet, Vamana Dev, he lifted his leg and he went high, high, high up. And you can see here, the coverings of the universe are there here. Earth, water, fire, like that you have these 8 coverings. So the tip of his toenail made a hole in the universe. And because of that, remember this ocean is floating in the Karana ocean or the causal ocean. The water from the causal ocean started to come inside the universe. And that is the origin of the river Ganges. Because it has touched the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when that water started to trickle down, Lord Brahma, who's at the topmost universe, he washed. When Vamanadev took his foot up, Lord Brahma washed the lotus feet of Vamanadev. So the Ganges water, the origin of the Ganges water is the water that is trickling down from the causal ocean, which has touched the lotus feet of Vamanadev, plus the water that Lord Brahma is using from his water pot, his Kamandulu, to wash the feet of Vamanadev. Both this combine, and that is what is the origin of the Ganges water.
So basically, the Ganges water is from the Karnodakshai ocean, right?
Karana ocean. From Karanodakasha.
Yes, yes.
Not the Garbhodaka ocean.
Yeah,
Karana
yeah.
ocean,
But
yeah,
that's
but it has become Ganges, it has become sanctified because it is touching the lotus feet of Vamanadev.
yes. But it is from Karno ocean.
It's a part of
It
Karana
is
ocean and
from the
also
Karno
the
ocean.
water that Brahma uses to wash the feet of Vamanadev. Both these waters combined,
Yes,
and that is the origin of the Ganges water.
right.
Okay, now let's read this again. The water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone. So this is why it is coming from the perspiration of the lotus feet of Krishna, which means it is actually coming from the feet of Vamanadev, okay? Including the water emanating from the perspiration of your lotus feet, namely the Ganges, purifies everyone, including the forefathers, the fire god, and all other demigods. So the Ganges water, it purifies everyone, including even the Devatas and also the forefathers. So this is the reason why when anybody in our family passes away, we put the ashes of the deceased in the Ganges water or in the Yamuna or in any sanctified water. But nowadays, because people have become lazy and because people are in the mode of ignorance, they don't have this knowledge. Therefore, they go and put the water in the beach also. But that is the beach, the water in the beach does not have the same purifying effect that the Ganges has or the river Yamuna has. Because these waters are sanctifying waters. It is touching the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the reason why the Ganges water it is described how this water turns pink. It attains a pinkish tinge because the water is touching the feet of the Lord, and he has kumkum and other things on his feet, no, also tulsi leaves. So it has the aroma of tulsi and it has a pinkish tinge, the Ganges, when it flows from the lotus feet of the Lord. So the Ganges is not an ordinary river. We should not see it from the material angle of vision. Then what do we have here? Bali Maharaj has become famous simply by washing your lotus feet, and he enjoyed all material opulences and later on was elevated to the highest position of liberation. So Bali Maharaj got liberated because he surrendered for the third step. So Vamandev said, where do I put my third step? So Bali Maharaj offered his head. So which means he completely surrendered to Krishna. So therefore he got he was elevated to the highest position of liberation. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds, so the Ganges water flows through the higher planetary systems, it flows through the earthly planetary systems as well as to the lower planetary systems. The Ganges water not only sanctifies the three worlds but is carried on the head of Lord Shiva. The ancestors of Bhagirath, sanctified by this water, achieved the heavenly planet. So this is another story. See, when the Ganges came trickling down through the hole in the universe caused by Vamanadev's toe, the Ganges was only residing in the higher planetary systems. She was a resident of the higher planetary systems only, within the universe, but only in the higher planetary systems. But what Bhagirath did was, he did a lot of tapasya because he wanted to liberate his ancestors. Now his ancestors, the 60,000 sons of one king called Sagara, they were cursed by Kapila Muni because they wrongly accused Kapila Muni of stealing a sacrificial horse there was a horse for the Ashwamedha Yagya, and they falsely accused Kapila Muni, who was in deep meditation, of having stolen that horse. So as soon as the sage opened his eyes, they were all reduced to ashes, 60,000 of them. And then after them, a couple of them wanted to do something so that these 60,000 sons of Sagara would be released from the curse, from their hellish condition. They were not able to get liberated. They were not able to get any elevation to a higher destination because they angered Kapila Muni. So therefore then another descendant of these 60,000 sons of Sagara, his name was Bhagirath. So he did a lot of tapasya to bring the Ganges down to the earthly planetary system. And therefore he prayed, and Mother Ganges agreed to come to earth. But she had two conditions. What are those two conditions? I'm going to leave with you for homework. I'm not going to say it now. You can read the chapter. I will show on the next slide. And then you can see what were Mother Ganges' two conditions. And then again, another problem was, how is she going to come? So Lord, because of the force, extreme force. So then again, Bhagirath prayed to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva agreed to receive her on his head before she can hit the earthly planetary systems. So yes, Vamanadev, he caused the origin of the Ganges, but she was a resident of the higher planetary systems. And then Bhagirath brought her down to the lower planetary systems, to the earthly and the lower planetary systems, because of his tapasya. So see here, he is praying to Mother Ganges, and then he prayed to Lord Shiva. And that's when the Ganges came down. So you can see a Vamanadev, he is lifting his leg, and Lord Brahma, he is washing his the feet of Vamanadev with the water from his water pot. and that water comes down. So the earth is being pierced, that water has trickled in, and plus the water from Brahma's Kamandulu, because both these waters are touching the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's how the Ganges originates. But then when she comes down to the lower planetary systems, to the earthly and the lower planetary systems, first she is received on the head of Lord Shiva. And all this because of the effort of Bhagirathi.
So Mataji, the time Bhagirath prayed and also Vamana, that thing happened at the same time. These two
No, the
incidents.
first incident was Vamana Dev, and then she was a resident of the heavenly planetary systems or higher planetary systems, but she did not flow down to earth. After some time, after I don't know what's the time period, but there was a time lapse of some years, and then only she came down because of Bhagirathi's tapasya.
Okay, thank you.
So here, if you go, you have here 4 chapters I'm keeping for you for your homework. You can read about the origin of the Ganges and also how the Ganges was brought down to the earthly and the lower planetary systems. So this is homework for you.
That's why Ganga is also known as Bhagirathi, right? Another
What?
name. Ganga's name is also Bhagirathi, right?
Yes, one of the names of Ganges is Bhagirathi, yes, because of Bhagirath who brought her down, correct. And also she is called as Vishnupadi. Vishnupadi means she is touching the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, she is also called as Vishnupadi, or also she is called as Bhagavatpadi, emanating from the feet of Bhagavan, emanating from the feet of God. So these are the other names of Ganges. So remember, Ganges is actually the Charnamrit of none other than Krishna himself, is the Charnamrit of Krishna. So we should be very careful also when we approach the Ganges. When we go to take a bath in the Ganges, first you approach the Ganges, immediately you don't put your feet in the Ganges. You take the water, put it on your head, seek permission, seek forgiveness, because you're putting your feet in that. No? We normally don't put our feet on something that is respectable. So therefore, first we take water, we put on our head, ask forgiveness, ask for permission, and then only we put our feet in the Ganges, because it's the Charanamrita of the Lord. And Ganges is also called as Tripathaga. Tripathaga means she is flowing in all the 3 worlds, higher, middle, and lower planetary systems. Another name of Ganga is Jata Shankari. Jata Shankari means she who is in the hair of Shankar. Jata Shankari. She is who is in the hair of Shankar or Lord Shiva. And also Shiva has one name called Gangadhar. He who carries Ganga on his head. So these are the names. So the water of the Ganges is supremely purifying, sanctifying. Therefore, she is called as Patita Pavani. Patita Pavani means she can deliver even the most fallen of the people. Ganga water is so sanctifying. That's the reason why we must put the ashes of our ancestors in the Ganges or in the Yamuna waters, or in a sanctified water, but not on the beach, not in the saltwater ocean. It's not the same thing. People say it's the same. It's not the same thing. Yeah, Shreya, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I had my hand raised when you were explaining that universe thing, but we can come back to it later.
No, you can ask now.
So I had a question that in the middle planetary systems, right, which you showed,
Yeah.
the diagram which you showed about the universe. So in that middle planetary systems, when we say that we have that Mercury, Earth, Venus, and all that, all those are in that middle of the earthly planetary system.
Yes, yes, yes. So remember, this is an earthly planetary system. And the middle, we saw some islands, and we said the innermost island is Jambudweep. Right? And then you have these planets, and then each one is surrounded by a different kind of an ocean. We have the saltwater ocean surrounding Jambudweep, which is the innermost planet. But we have other oceans like the sugarcane ocean, a planet of an ocean of honey, ocean of liquor, ocean of so like that, there are different oceans. So what we know, these planets, what you're mentioning, they are all part of the innermost island, Jambudweep. Within Jambudweep also, there are different tracts of land. All right. So all these other planets are a part of Jambudweep.
Okay. So this more Mercury, Venus, Pluto, all that is a part of Jambudvip only.
Yes, yes.
And then another island has also its own planets.
There are different tracts of land. It's called as khandas or varshas. They are called different tracts of land. Each of those dvipas.
Okay.
But it's in Jambudvip, which is in Jambudvip, we are situated in the southernmost corner, and that is called as Bharatavarsha. The tract of land where we are located is called Bharatavarsha, and that is in the southernmost circle, and that is what is called as the Karma Bhumi. Karma Bhumi means here we can accumulate karmas, but in other tracts of land is not Karma Bhumi, it is Bhoga Bhumi, where they exhaust their karmas. They don't accumulate more karmas.
In another
Yes, in
dvipas,
other,
right?
yeah, yes.
Okay. So then in this universe, we are the only human, right? On the earthly planet, which is in the Earth planet, whatever we humans are there. So we are the only humans. And then in another universe, there are another humans,
Yes.
right?
When you say
So-
Earth planet, you're talking about the Earth planet according to modern science, not the earthly planetary system, right?
Right.
Okay. Yes.
No, Mataji, no karma place. Is that where we go after death? Based on our karma?
So based on our karma, we can go anywhere within this universe, any of these planetary systems.
But in Jambudvip, you were talking about Bharatavarsha. Bharatavarsha makes create karma, and there's another place there is no karma, right? Do we?
Okay. So when I say Bharatavarsha is Karma Bhumi, it means this is the place where we can accumulate karma, good
Mhm.
karma or bad karma. But when
Okay.
you go on other planetary systems, you are only exhausting that which you have collected. You cannot make more good or more bad karma.
Okay, so
It's like going on a vacation.
okay, so the upper planetary system, that's what you are talking about in Jambudvip.
No, Jambudvip is the innermost island of the earthly planetary system here.
Okay. Within
This
this
earthly
planetary
planetary
system.
system has different islands, and each island is surrounded by a ocean.
Mhm.
So Jambudvip is the innermost island of the earthly planetary system. And within the Jambudvip, there are different khandas, and one khanda is Bharatavarsha.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
I had shared one PDF before of the regarding these different dvipas and the different salt water and the other oceans. I had shared one PDF sometime back in the group.
Yeah,
Share it again.
I'm trying to connect that picture and this one universe, this picture.
Yeah, so that picture, which has the different islands, is all
Okay.
in this earthly planetary system.
Okay.
It's so technical. It's very difficult to like.
Yeah. So just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Yeah, Shailesh?
My question is regarding the Krishna book part where we are coming. So basically, Krishna essentially refuses to go with Akrura, at least at the moment. He says, that I won't come with you right now. Maybe after I, I kill all the demons, I shall visit your house. Uh, so why would he do that? Because I thought that since Akrura had given him the vision of him as Mahavishnu, he would consider him a great devotee, and I thought that he would sanctify his house, but he doesn't.
Not yet. He has, for him now, it's more important, immediate business to finish the demons who have been harassing his parents and who have been harassing his devotees. So he wants to first deal with the demons and then he will go to Akrura's house. That's how Krishna is prioritizing. Okay. Okay, so this is homework, 4 chapters. Coming back to Krishna book. On hearing this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna replied, Akrura, I shall surely come to your house with my elder brother Balaram, but only after killing all the demons who are envious of the Yadu dynasty. In this way, I shall please all my relatives. Akrura became a little disappointed by these words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he could not disregard the order. He therefore entered Mathura and informed Kamsa about the arrival of Krishna, and then he entered his own home. So, of course, Akrura is a pure devotee, but because he's working for Kamsa, he went and informed Kamsa that, okay, you sent me on a mission. You wanted me to bring Krishna and Balaram to Mathura, and now they have come to Mathura. So he informs this to King Kamsa. After Akrura's departure, Lord Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys entered Mathura to see the city. They observed that the gate of Mathura was made of first-class marble, very well constructed, and that the doors were made of pure gold. There were gorgeous orchards and gardens all around, and the whole city was encircled by canals so that no enemy could enter very easily. They saw that all the crossroads were decorated with gold, and that there were copper and brass storehouses for stocking grain. And there were many rich men's houses, all appearing symmetrical as if constructed by one engineer. The houses were decorated with costly jewels, and each and every house had nice compounds of trees bearing fruits and flowers. The corridors and verandas of the houses were decorated with silk cloth and embroidery work in jewels and pearls. In front of the balcony windows were pigeons and peacocks walking and cooing. All the grain dealers' shops within the city were decorated with different kinds of flowers and garlands, newly grown grass, and pleasing flowers like narcissus and roses. The entrance doors of the houses were decorated with water pots filled with water. A mixture of water, yogurt, sandalwood pulp, and flowers was sprinkled all around the doors, which were also decorated with burning lamps of different sizes. Over all the doors were decorations of fresh mango leaves and silk festoons. So just see how much opulence is there. 5,000 years ago, houses were decorated with costly jewels. And even on the roads, there was gold. And the doors were made of pure gold. So you can see how India was a very, very opulent country 5,000 years ago. When the news spread that Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys were within Mathura city, all the inhabitants gathered, and the ladies and girls immediately went up to the roofs of the houses to see them. They had been awaiting the arrival of Krishna and Balaram with great anxiety, and in their extreme eagerness to see Krishna and Balaram, the ladies did not dress themselves very properly. Some of them placed their clothes in the wrong place. Some anointed their eyes on one side only, and some wore ankle bells only on one leg or wore only one earring. Thus, in great haste, not even decorated properly, they went to see Krishna from the roofs. Some of them had been taking their lunch, but as soon as they heard that Krishna and Balaram were in the city, they left their eating and ran to the roofs. Some of them were in the bathroom taking their baths, but without properly finishing their baths, they went to see Krishna and Balaram. Some were engaged in feeding their children breast milk, but they put their babies aside and went to see Krishna and Balaram. Passing by very slowly and smiling, Krishna immediately stole their hearts. So see the impact of Krishna on the women of Mathura. He who is the husband of the goddess of fortune passed through the street like an elephant. For a very long time, the women of Mathura had heard about Krishna and Balaram and their uncommon characteristics, and they were very much attracted and eager to see them. Now, when they actually saw Krishna and Balaram passing on the street and saw them sweetly smiling, the ladies' joy reached the point of ecstasy. When they actually saw them with their eyes, they took Krishna and Balaram within their hearts and began to embrace them to their fullest desire. Their bodily hair stood up in ecstasy. They had heard of Krishna, but they had never seen him, and now their longing was relieved. Upon going up on the roofs of the palaces of Mathura, the ladies, their faces joyful, began to shower flowers upon Krishna and Balaram. When the brothers were passing through the streets, all the Brahmanas in their neighborhood went out with sandal water and flowers and respectfully welcomed them to the city. all the residents of Mathura began to talk among themselves about the elevated and pious activities of the people of Vrindavan. The residents of Mathura were surprised at the pious activities the cowherd men in Vrindavan must have performed in their previous lives to be able to see Krishna and Balaram daily as cowherd boys. So you see here, they know, the residents of Mathura very well know that Krishna and Balaram, they are the supreme personalities of Godhead. They are not covered by the Yogamaya potency. That happens only in Vrindavan. That mood to see Krishna and Balaram as ordinary cowherd boys, as their friend, as their Gopa friend. That mood is only in Vrindavan. The minute Krishna and Balaram, they leave Vrindavan, then the mood is more of reverence, more of formality. While Krishna and Balaram were passing in this way, they saw a washerman and dyer of clothing. Krishna was pleased to ask him for some nice clothing. He also promised that if the washerman would deliver the nicest dyed cloth to him, the washerman would become very happy and all good fortune would be his. Krishna was not a beggar, nor was he in need of clothing, but by this request he indicated that everyone should be ready to offer Krishna whatever he wants. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. Devotee means a person who is in Krishna consciousness. The only thing the devotee wants is, I want to please Krishna. Whatever I need to do to please Krishna, I should do. That is Krishna consciousness. So here in this case, the washerman, if he had to please Krishna, if he was a devotee, then he would give him whatever Krishna wants, whatever Krishna is asking. But let's see what he does. Unfortunately, this washerman was a servant of Kamsa and therefore could not appreciate the demand of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the effect of bad association. He could have immediately delivered the clothing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who promised him all good fortune. But being a servant of Kamsa, the sinful demon could not accept the offer. Instead of being pleased, he was very angry and refused the Lord's request, saying, How is it that you are asking for clothing which is meant for the king? The washerman then began to instruct Krishna and Balaram. My dear boys, in the future, don't be so impudent as to ask for things which belong to the king. Otherwise, you will be punished by the government men. They will arrest you and punish you, and you will be in difficulty. I have practical experience of this fact. Anyone who unlawfully wants to use the king's property is very severely punished. So the washerman refuses to give Krishna and Balaram clothes when he could have very easily done so, because he is a servant of Kamsa and he has been contaminated by the association of the demons. He has been contaminated. His mind, his mentality, everything has become contaminated because he is associating with the demon Kamsa. Yeah, Shailesh?
Actually, it is about what will come on the next page. So basically, after this, Krishna just eliminates him. So I just wanted to understand why would he eliminate him?
We will see.
Why
Let's read
not
the
just
slide. Let's read the slide and we'll come to it. On hearing this, Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, became very angry at the washerman and striking him with the upper portion of his hand, he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman fell down dead on the ground. In this way, Lord Krishna confirmed the statement of the Brahma Samhita that every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes without a sword, but simply with his hand, he cut off the head of the washerman. This is proof that the Supreme Lord is omnipotent. If he wants to do something, he can do it without extraneous help. So because the washerman refused to give him clothing, and because he is a servant of Kamsa, and he is contaminated because of Kamsa's association, Krishna beheaded him. He separated his head from his body. And he did it with his bare hands. He didn't need a sword. So see this line here. Every limb of his body is capable of doing everything he likes. Now, that is not the case with jivas. That is not the case with living entities. No, like you and me. If we have to eat, we have to eat only through the mouth. We cannot eat through the ears or the eyes or the nose, right? We have to eat through the mouth. We have to hear only through the ears. We have to see only through the eyes. But Krishna is not like that. God means he can do any activity with any part of his body. Krishna can even eat by just looking at the food. By his vision, he can also eat, no? So Krishna's senses are interchangeable, unlike our senses. Krishna's limbs are all interchangeable, unlike ours. That's the point that is being made here. Now, coming to why did Krishna kill him for just not giving him the clothes? So we have to see the background. What is the past life of this particular washerman? Can you connect this washerman to any character in Ram Leela? Does it ring a bell somewhere?
The washerman who said said false things about Lady Sita.
Yes, exactly. So this washerman in Krishna Leela was also the washerman in Ram Leela. We see this in the Garga Samhita. Let's see. Who was the washerman in his previous birth? Why did Lord Krishna kill him? Why did his spiritual effulgence merge in Lord Krishna's body? Sri Narada said. So remember, Garga Samhita is a conversation between Narada Muni and his disciple. So the disciple is making inquiries and Narada Muni is answering. So Narada Muni is saying, O king of Videha, in Treta Yuga, in Lord Rama's kingdom in Ayodhya, as Lord Rama's spies overheard, this same washerman said to his wife, I will not maintain you, a sinner that returns at dawn from another's house. Ramachandra, who is greedy to enjoy with his wife, may continue to maintain his Sita, but I am not like him. Hearing from many mouths that the people were criticizing him, Lord Ramachandra at once exiled Sita to the forest. Lord Ramachandra had no wish to punish him, and in due course, this person became a washerman in Mathura at the end of Dwapara Yuga. To stop this blasphemy, however, Lord Krishna killed him. Then the Lord, who is an ocean of mercy, gave him liberation. So this washerman, because he was very offensive to Sita, and now he continued to be offensive to Krishna and Balaram, he was continuing to commit more and more offenses. So actually it is Krishna's mercy that he's killing him. Because if he lives more, he will be committing more and more offenses. And he will be going deeper and deeper into the cycle of birth and death. But because Krishna killed him, he prevents him from committing any more offenses. And also he gives him liberation. He also gives him mukti. We have the shloka, no? Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu. Karuna Sindhu means he is the ocean of Karuna. He is the ocean of mercy. So because Krishna is the ocean of mercy, therefore Krishna has killed this washerman. Does that answer your question, Shailesh? Okay, Shreya?
Yes, it does.
Why didn't he answer in Treta Yuga itself,
See here,
Of
see
course, there are so
see
many
the
things.
lords, when they come, each one has a different mood. Each one has a different mood. So Lord Ram was in no mood. See here, Lord Ramachandra had no wish to punish him. So that's not the mood of Lord Ramachandra to punish him. He only wants the well-being of his subjects, no? And also this question of why did Lord Ram banish Sita? See, Lord Ram is a king, and it's a duty of a king to first keep his subjects before his family. If you have to go to vote for someone, whom would you vote for? Let's say you have two choices. One leader says, if I become the president of the country, I will keep the interest of the country before my own family. And the other leader says, I will keep the interest of my family before I keep the interest of the country. Where is your vote going?
First person.
Isn't it? So actually it's a duty of every leader, of every king to take care of his subjects. So Lord Ramachandra, for him, the primary importance is to take care of the subjects. So therefore, he had to send Sita to the forest. So he's not in the mood of punishing this washerman because it was the general mood that was going on there. And there were others also who were talking about how it is unacceptable for Lord Ram to accept Sita because she has stayed in another man's house. And it was kind of setting a trend. It was setting a trend that, okay, if my leader can do this, then I can also do this. If the queen can stay in another man's house, then even I can go and stay in another man's house and my husband will have to accept me. No, it was starting off on that, on those lines. Therefore, Lord Ramachandra had to cut it off immediately by sending Sita to the forest.
But she didn't go by her own will, right? She was kidnapped. So, like, how can the residents of Ayodhya, they were so dedicated to Ram and Sita, talk like this?
So again, you have to remember that Treta Yuga, not everybody is a pure devotee, not everybody is a Paramahamsa. That only happens in Satya Yuga. So in every Yuga, the religiosity is reducing by 25%. In Satya Yuga, everybody is 100% religious. Everybody is a Paramahamsa, topmost devotee. But in the next Yuga, in the Treta Yuga, it has reduced by 25%. So only 75% of the people are religious, 25% are not religious. Then again, Dwapar Yuga, it is only 50%. And then Kali Yuga, only 25% are religious. So remember, in Treta Yuga, 25% of the people are not fully religious. And remember, and even now, it's something that is not socially acceptable. If a woman goes and stays in somebody else's house, of course, she was kidnapped. But even now, it can be a controversial subject matter, right? In Kali Yuga. And this was like how many hundreds and thousands of years back? This was in Treta Yuga, even before Dwapara Yuga. So the social system there was pretty conservative. And there are other factors also how to explain the banishment of Sita. For example, it was not really a banishment because Lord Ram told Lakshman to leave her in the ashram of Valmiki, and Valmiki's ashram was very much within the kingdom of Ayodhya, which was very much within Lord Ram's kingdom. And she was nicely taken care of in that hermitage. There were other women in the hermitage, and she was very nicely taken care of during pregnancy. And also Sita had told Lord Ram that in my pregnancy, my desire is to live with the saintly people, because here in the palace, that possibility is not there. So it's for giving good good lessons to the children in the womb. She desired to stay with saintly people so that they can hear the saintly discourse every day. The children can hear the saintly discourse every day in the womb. So she had expressed to Lord Ram that now that I'm pregnant, my desire is to live with the sages. She had also said that. Another reason is Sita is dharmacharini, which means that she always follows dharma. And if at all she also felt that Lord Ram is doing something that is against the rule of dharma, then she would have protested. She would have told Ram that what you are doing is not religious. But she never said that to Lord Ram, which means she also understands that what Lord Ram doing is very much within the framework of dharma, because his duty as a king is primary. Yeah. I don't know who is Samsung SMF7.
It's me, Lavina.
Lavina, yes, tell me.
Actually, as you said that Sita said that as she's pregnant, but Lord Ram didn't knew that she was pregnant, isn't it?
No, he knew that she's pregnant. He knew that she's pregnant.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, coming back to Krishna book. After this ghastly incident, the employees of the washerman immediately dispersed, leaving the clothing. Krishna and Balaram took possession of it and dressed according to their choice. The rest of the clothes were offered to the cowherd boys, who also used them as they desired. What they did not use remained there. Krishna, Balaram, and the boys then proceeded along the main road. In the meantime, a devotee tailor took the opportunity of service and prepared some nice clothes from the cloth of Krishna and Balaram. Thus, being very nicely attired, Krishna and Balaram looked like elephants dressed with colored clothing on the full moon day or the dark moon day. Krishna was very much pleased with the tailor and gave him the benediction of Sarupya Mukti, which means that after leaving his body, he would be liberated and would attain a four-handed body exactly like that of Narayan in the Vaikuntha planets. Krishna also granted him that as long as he would live, he would earn sufficient opulence to be able to enjoy sense gratification. By this incident, Krishna proved that those who are Krishna conscious devotees will not be lacking material enjoyment of sense gratification. They will have sufficient opportunity for such things. But after leaving this body, they will be allowed to enter the spiritual planets of Vaikuntha Loka or Krishna Loka, Goloka, Vrindavan. So there was a tailor there, or a weaver. The Bhagavatam says weaver and Krishna book says tailor. Anyway, same thing. Who took the opportunity. He saw that here is my opportunity to serve Krishna and Balaram, to serve the devotees of Krishna and Balaram, to serve the Gopa friends of Krishna and Balaram. So he takes the opportunity and he makes them very nice clothes. And Krishna, he gave them, he blessed him with Sarupya Mukti. Sarupya means same roop. So he would be liberated and would attain a four-handed body exactly like that of Narayan. So he's going to get the same rupa, same form as Narayan. That's the mukti that he gave to this particular tailor. Now this tailor also, there's a past life from the Garga Samhita. Let's see. Sri Bahulasva said, O best of sages, in his previous life, who was the weaver that received from Lord Krishna a transcendental form like his own? Sri Narada said, in the previous life, he was a weaver in Mithila city, a great devotee of the Lord and an expert weaver. On King Kshiradhwaja's order, he made very fine garments for Ram and Lakshman to wear on Lord Ram's wedding day. O king, when he saw Ram and Lakshman, who are more handsome than millions of Kamadevs, the noble-hearted weaver became enchanted. In his heart, he desired, I wish with my own hands I could make garments to place on their limbs. In his heart, all-knowing Lord Ram blessed him that his desire would be fulfilled in Bharatavarsha at the end of Dwapara Yuga. By the blessings of Lord Ram, he took birth in Mathura city. He personally made garments for Krishna and Balaram, and he attained a transcendental form like theirs. So in the previous life, this particular tailor, he had the desire to personally make the garments for Lord Ram. So the Lord fulfilled his desire. Who is King Kshiradhwaja? Who is the father of Sita?
Janak Maharaj.
Janak.
Yeah, Janak Maharaj. So actually, Kshiradhwaja is another name for King Janaka. Kshiradhwaja means he who has a dhwaja. Dhwaja means like a banner, and Shira is a plow. He who has a plow, banner. So what is the connection between Janak Maharaj and a plow?
Sita came from the ground.
Yes, when he was plowing the land, that's when he saw Sita. That's how he found Sita, his daughter. Okay. Coming back to Krishna book. After dressing nicely, Krishna and Balaram went to a florist of the name Sudama. As soon as they reached the precinct of his house, the florist immediately came out and with great devotion fell down on his face to offer his respectful obeisances. He offered a nice seat to Krishna and Balaram and asked his assistant to bring out flowers, betel nuts and pulp of chandan. The florist welcomed greatly satisfied the Lord. The florist very humbly and submissively offered his prayers to the Lord, saying, My dear Lord, because you have come to my place, I think all my forefathers and all my worshipable superiors are pleased and delivered. My dear Lord, you are the supreme cause of all causes of this cosmic manifestation. But for the benefit of the residents of this earthly planet, you have appeared with your plenary portion to give protection to your devotees and annihilate the demons. You are equally disposed as the friend of all living entities. You are the super soul and you do not discriminate between friend and enemy. Yet you are pleased to give your devotees the special result of their devotional activities. My Lord, I am praying that you please tell me whatever you wish me to do because I am your eternal servant. If you would order me to do something, it would be a great favor to me. So see, this is the mood of a devotee. Whatever you wish me to do, I will be very happy to do. It will be a great favor to me. This is how a devotee thinks. And see here, because you have come to my place, I think all my forefathers and all my worshipable superiors are pleased and delivered. So this florist, because of his service to Lord Krishna, he is able to liberate his forefathers also. So every single devotee can liberate generations before and after him, depending on how advanced a devotee he himself is. The more advanced one is, the more number of generations he can deliver before and after him. So it's very much in our favor if we try to make our children devotees. Okay. The florist Sudama was greatly pleased within his heart by seeing Krishna and Balaram in his place, and thus, as his choicest desire, he made 2 exquisite garlands of various flowers and presented them to the Lord. Krishna and Balaram were very much pleased with his sincere desire, and Krishna offered the florist his salutation and benedictions, which he is always prepared to bestow upon the surrendered souls. When the florist was offered benedictions, he begged from the Lord that he might remain his eternal servant in devotional service, and by such service do good to all living creatures. By this, it is clear that a devotee of the Lord in Krishna consciousness should not be satisfied simply by his own advancement in devotional service. He must be willing to work for the welfare of all others. So, a devotee of Vaishnava means, yes, I have received a mercy, I have been very fortunate, but I also want to make others fortunate. No, so therefore Krishna consciousness means we try to make others also fortunate by repeating what we have heard from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Now there is also the past life of this particular florist from the Garga Samhita. Let's see. Sri Bahulashva said, O Brahmana, what pious deeds did the florist Sudama perform that handsome Krishna and Balaram personally came to his house? Please describe that to me. In Kuvera's beautiful Chaitraratha gardens, there was a florist named Hema Mali. He was peaceful, generous, and devoted to Lord Vishnu. He associated with saintly persons. He worshipped Lord Shiva to attain the company of Lord Vishnu. For 5,000 years, he daily took 300 lotus flowers, placed them before Lord Shiva, and bowed down. Lord Shiva, who is an ocean of mercy, was very pleased. One day he said, Intelligent florist, asked for a boon. With folded hands, bowing before Lord Shiva, circumambulating him, and standing before him with bowed head, Hemamali spoke. Sri Hemamali said, By your blessings, may I be able to see with my own eyes the perfect supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, enter my home. Lord Shiva said, O noble-hearted one, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, in Bharatavarsha, in Mathura city, your desire will bear fruit. Of this, there is no doubt. Sri Narada said, by Lord Shiva's blessings, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, noble-hearted Hemamali was born as the florist Sudama. So this is the past life of Sudama. Coming back to Krishna book. This example was followed by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. It is therefore stated in a prayer about them. Lokanam hita karinau. Vaishnavas or devotees of the Lord are not selfish. Whatever benefits they derive from the Supreme Personality of Godhead as benedictions, they want to distribute to all other persons. That is the greatest of all humanitarian activities. Being satisfied with the florist, Lord Krishna not only gave him whatever benedictions he wanted, but over and above that, he offered him all material opulences, family prosperity, a long duration of life, and whatever else his heart desired within the material world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 41st chapter of Krishna. Krishna enters Mathura. So these 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they are actually the direct disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And actually they belong to very, very opulent families. But because of the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they lived a renounced life. They would live under different trees every night. And they would wear torn clothes. They would live by whatever they got by begging, whatever dry food they got by begging, they would sustain themselves with that, and they would dedicate their life in following the principles and following the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they are being used here as an example how they don't keep what they have for themselves, but they want to give mercy to others. So they dedicated a lot of their time in writing books about the philosophy. They would be preaching always. And for themselves, they just had the bare minimum. They would, even when they would sleep under different trees. Not that they're sleeping under the same tree every day. They would go to different trees. Mostly they would sleep for, if they slept, they slept for 1.5 hours only in a 24-hour period. And sometimes they did not even sleep for 1.5 hours. So these are the 6 living Swamis of Vrindavan. On that note, by the mercy of Sri Guru and Sri Krishna, we come to the end of today's presentation. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Do we have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. In the last class, I asked about the sporting activity that I am not actually very much clear on this part. Is Nirantar Prabhu referring to the gambling, or is he referring to the sports that we play like badminton, chess, and all that?
Say frivolous, what Prabhuji has written there is any activity that you cannot put under your 9 items of devotional service. That's what he wrote there, no? You cannot put it under the 9 items of devotional service. It is not Shravanam, it is not Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So that's the definition. And that's what Prabhu Nirantara explains. Because these frivolous sports are something that are not devotional service.
But
In
we
the strict sense of the term. Now, if you require to engage in some activities just to, for example, say now we have the visit of many ISKCON gurus, no, and one of them is Govinda Priya Mataji. She's a disciple of Radhanath Maharaj, but she has many administrative services in ISKCON, and she's on a very high post within ISKCON. So we had this Vaishnavi Sangha with her. So she was saying how for a devotee already has a lot to do, right? That's why time for a devotee is very, very precious. And she was telling how an average person speaks about some 18,000 words a day, she was saying. But a devotee has already spoken those 18,000 words when the devotee has chanted the 16 rounds in the morning. Right? So it's not so easy. So she was saying sometimes you need to take a break. Take a break not from your daily sadhana, but take a break in the sense that she was saying, if you know that during this particular time of the month, for a woman, for example, these 5 days of the month, I am not going to be at my best form. No. So you plan your schedule in such a way that you engage in some other activities so that you can, you needed to refresh and replenish yourself to again go back to doing your services in full form. So she gave the example of how Arjuna, every time he would, not only Arjuna, but any warrior, when you have to leave an arrow, when you have to shoot an arrow at full speed, you have to pull back first, right? The more you pull back, then at the more speed and more accuracy the arrow is going to shoot. So we devotees also, sometimes we have to pull ourselves back. So she was saying that how she engages in other activities during those times of the month when she knows that she will not be in full form, go to the spa, do this and do that. But that is with what mentality? To replenish yourself so that you can go in full force and do your devotional service for the upcoming days, like that. So a lot depends on your mentality when you're engaging in any sporting, any sports also. Sometimes if you need that for replenishing yourself, then it's okay, because a lot depends on what is your mentality at that time, right?
Yes, Mataji. Yeah. Now it is clear. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, Shreya?
And also, like I heard in one of the lecture, I think from Amoghleela Prabhu, that when Krishna said in Gita also that do everything in balance, So
Do everything?
in balance, like do everything in balance. Like if you're eating, don't eat too much or too less, like that. So if you're engaging in some hobbies or activities, don't overdo, and just don't do at all, don't do like that also. Because I mean, that's what I feel. If I'm doing something, like if I'm maintaining, like if I'm working out or something, then it just helps me physically also, and which helps me mentally also. So
Yes. Yes, because whatever is good for you, you need for your health, physical, mental health also, you have to do it. See, health is number one priority for the devotees. Even Prabhupada has written that prioritizing. First priority should be health. Because if you don't have health, you cannot chant, you cannot engage in your personal sadhana, you cannot read, you cannot do anything. So whatever is required to maintain your physical and mental health, you do it. And why with that mentality that, yes, I have to take care of my physical health. This is important for my mental health. So therefore, I engage in this, and then I can keep going in my devotional service, devotional life.
Right.
Wendy? Wendy, no te escucho. I cannot hear you, Wendy.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yes, now yes.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Con este pasatiempo que compartió, queda como tan claro, tan evidente que cada corto periodo de vida que tenemos es como para dedicarnos al avance espiritual constantemente a través de nuestras propias actividades. Es como tan claro porque mira cómo ellos han acumulado méritos en sus vidas pasadas y hoy o en ese momento pudieron tener eh, la presencia del Señor en ese instante y ser liberados. So, es cada vez más claro para nosotros mismos mantenernos enfocados en eso, en que debemos que aprovechar el corto tiempo de vida que tenemos para iniciar actividades en favor del Señor amorosamente, no buscando la liberación, sino más bien honrando nuestra posición como sirvientes eternos de Él. Y en algún momento tendremos la oportunidad de finalmente llegar a la meta. Pero quería preguntarle, ahora mismo es como tan claro ver eso, pero no siempre se mantiene esa claridad. So, ¿qué uno tiene que hacer para que... Yo sé que estamos en un estado, en un planeta que es dual, so a veces estamos de una forma, a veces de otra, pero constantemente no siempre se mantiene tal claridad. So, ¿qué hay que hacer para todos los días mantenernos en esta posición y seguir avanzando? No sé si me puede entender con mi pregunta.
Sí, sí, entiendo. Lo que es sumamente importante para nosotros es siempre mantener en asociación de los devotos. Este nos va a ayudar a fortalecer nuestra fe, ¿no? Que no hay que rendirse y que sí vamos a tener resultados. Porque nosotros sabemos, theoretically, nosotros sabemos que esto se va a suceder. Pero con el tiempo, si no tenemos asociación de los devotos, este fe puede ir ser más débil. Entonces, es sumamente importante que siempre mantengamos nosotros en asociación de los devotos. Con eso podemos mantener lo que usted dice.
Ok, gracias, Hare Krishna. Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so here Shantaram and Sheetal Latkar had their wedding anniversary yesterday. That is 28th February 2026. So how many years of wedded bliss do you enjoy?
47 years.
47 years. Wow.
Wow.
Very nice. So we wish you both a very, very happy wedding anniversary, and may you have many, many more years of wedded bliss in Krishna consciousness, keeping Krishna in the center. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm to hear Krishna Katha, even after 47 years of marriage. Thank you so much.
Sure. I had two observations here. Good that you explained the background of the tailor and the washerman and all. That only proves that nothing comes out of nothing. So there has to be something, only then something will come out.
Exactly.
That clarified my doubt. And secondly, it also proves that one can have best of both the worlds. Best of both the worlds. And one need not be only, what I should say, Spartan in living for attaining spiritual advancement. That's the learning I got from this.
Yes, you can live in a very opulent way. No problem. Why not? Even Srila Prabhupada, see, initial days of Srila Prabhupada, before he went to the West, he would live a very, very austere life. It is described how that he would, just to save some coins, he would walk long distances to save the bus fare so that he can use the money for printing books. So he lived very frugally. And later, when he traveled to the West, also, of course, he lived an austere life, but then there were cars at his disposal, and he would use the cars to go from point A to point B. When he went to the Western world, money started coming into ISKCON. So, and it's not that a devotee has to live like a beggar. No, you can live comfortably, but always with the mentality that everything belongs to Krishna, and I have to use it in the service of Krishna. So with that mentality, you can own a lavish bungalow, you can own a nice car, you can live comfortably, but always never forget that everything comes from Krishna, and I should use it in the service of Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare
Bye-bye.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wishes.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready for the exam? Oh, we have
Thank
one
you for
hand
the
raised.
wish. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Okay. Thank you for coming to our classes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Shivani, you have your hand raised?
Yes, Mataji. In the beginning, when you were telling about the oceans, can you explain that again, please? I've just forgotten.
Okay, I would recommend you watch the recording, Shivani, because that explanation would require another 10 minutes. And we would be keeping everybody on hold for something that has already been explained in the class. So I would recommend you watch the recording, and there you can hear it again. And if you have further doubts, then you message me. Is that okay?
Okay. Sure, thank you.
All right. So the link for the exam is in your chat.
It's not here, Mataji.
It's not come yet?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
Oh, I sent it as a private message to Shailesh Thakur. I'm sorry, because in the chat window I was like that. Okay, here. Now.